Good morning, students. Welcome back to your virtual classes from Oscar Public School. I hope you will be enjoying your summer vacations. It's very good, but you have to do study also. So let's come back to the topic. The topic is administration in the kingdoms. Class, I have told you in the last class invasion of the Islam. How Islam entered in India in the first Muhammad of Ghazni, who came in the India and he looted India 17 times. But Muhammad Ghori didn't stay in India. He go back to the Ghazni, and after that Muhammad Ghori came in India and he was the king. He was the ruler of the Afghanistan, and he wanted wealth as well as establish the kingdom in the India. And Muhammad Ghori also didn't stay in India, and he left his slave Qutubuddin Aibak, and Qutubuddin Aibak was also a Muslim and who set up the Delhi Sultanate in India. Okay. Next is administration in the kingdoms. The kings had supreme power. They adopted the great title of Maharaja Adhiraj, Tirubhuvana Chakravartin, Lord of Three World. Okay, class, if we talk about administration during that time period, they got the title, the Maharaja Dhiraj was given, which was a Lord of Kings. The next title is Tirubhavan Chakravartin, the Lord of Three Worlds, and these titles were popular in that time period. Okay, class? And kings also shared power with their samantas and as well as with association of peasants, traders, brahmanas. High posts in the army were filled by the people from influential families and the close relatives of the king. The position were often hereditary. Okay, class, in that time period the post was hereditary. Okay, it's not a elected. Okay, class, next topic is revenue collection. The producers like peasant, artisans, cattle keeper had to surrender some part of their produce as tax. Sometimes a part of the produce was claimed as rent because land was the property of the lord. Revenue was also collected from traders. There was expansion of trade across the seas and the frontier of kingdoms. Thus, revenue collection was broad based. Generally, people from the influential families and close relatives of the king collected revenue for the kings. These positions were often hereditary. Okay, class. So next topic is revenue collection. So then come to the taxation. Class, taxation is its mean revenue. It's very important in that time period, and the taxation was mainly in the form of forced labor, not was the cash form. It's known as a vetting. Okay, in each of these states and resources were obtained from the producer, that is peasant, cattle keepers, artisan, who were often pursued and compelled to the surrender part of their produces. Sometimes these were claimed as rent due to lord who asserted because whole land was the property of the lord, so everyone have to pay taxes and revenue was collected from traders. Okay, class, these resources were used to finance the king establishment as well as the construction of temples and fort. They were also used to fight wars, which were in turn expected to lead to acquisition of wealth in the form of plunder and access to land as well as the trade routes. The functionary of collecting revenue was generally recruited from the influential family, and positions were often to hereditary as well, as we know that. This was true about the army as well. In many cases, close relatives of the king held in these position. Okay class, so revenue is a very important in that time period, as a mainly is not a cash form, it's the generally in the form of forced labor. And we can see in that time period and various type of taxation. Okay, the uses of revenue. What is the uses of revenue in that time period? In these kingdoms, resources were used for the following purpose: to finance the king establishment, to construct temples and fort, and to fight and wars. Okay class, so next other taxes, kadmai or land revenue we can tell. Now these taxes were used for the construction of temples and financial establishment, and their taxes helps to king various war. So that main purpose to the taxes of at that time period. Okay class, first finance the king establishment, to construct temple and forts, and to fight wars. Okay, so next topic is, okay, it's not a next topic, it's a pending part of this topic, uses of revenue. Remarkably, kings expected the wars would lead to the acquisition of the wealth in the form of gold, jewelry, land, as well as trade routes. Okay, so next topic is a prashastis. Prashastis, what is prashastis? Prashastis were often written in the praise of the kings. They mentioned of the king as a valiant and victorious warrior, etc. They described the king's achievements, and the prashasti was composed by learned brahmanas. Class, prashasti, what is prashasti? In fact, you have read in the 6th class. Prashasti contain details that may be not literally true, but they tell us how ruler wanted to describe themselves as valiant, victorious warriors. For example, these were composed by the learned Brahmins, and who occasionally help in the administration. Okay class, so land grants. So next topic is critical writings. In contrast to the writers of prashastis, a 12th century author named Kalhana, who was often critical about rulers and their policies. He composed a long Sanskrit poem that contained a history of the kings of Kashmir. He took the help of the variety of sources such as inscriptions, document earlier histories, eyewitness account, etc. to complete his work. Okay class, if you remember, we saw Kalhan history, and which was Rastarangni, if you remember Kalhana. But Prashasti overall, it's about the achievements of kings. But Kalhana wrote a Prashasti, but it's not a praise of Prashasti, it's critical writing. Okay, so it's very important because it was only the source of critical writings. So next topic is land grants. Kings often rewarded brahmanas by grants of land. The grants were recorded on copper plates, and these recorded plates were given to those who received the land. A person who received the land could collect tax from it. Okay class, kings, you know very well, kings often rewarded brahmanas and of the land grant. Kings often rewarded the brahmanas by the grant of land, and these were recorded on the copper plate. Now you can see in this picture the side of the copper plate recording a grant of land, partially in the Sanskrit and partially in Tamil language. The ring holding the plates together is secured with the royal seal to indicate that is an authentic document. Okay class, so it's they were recording on the copper plates. Now you can see in this picture, and which were given to those who received the land. And these copper plates partially in the Sanskrit language and partial in the Tamil language. Okay class, so unusually for the 12th century was a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of king who ruled over Kashmir, and it was composed by an author named Kalhana. I have told about in this topic, and he used a variety of sources including inscriptions, document, eyewitness documents, earlier histories, and to write his account. Unlike the writers of Prashastis, but he was often critical about rulers and their policies. Okay, so revenue collection in that time period, revenue also paid, and the uses of revenue we have talked about that. And the next is Prashasti, it was a praise of the an achievement of the king. And the next is critical writing. I have told about that. Kalhana, who was a single person who talked about a critical writings. Okay, next is the land grant. I have told about that. The kings rewarded the brahmanas by the land grant, and it's recorded on the copper plate. Okay class, so next topic is the Cholas. Okay, to a closer look of the Cholas, and that is case study of Cholas in that time period. Now you can see in the map Cholas also were ruling in that time period and the area of these. Okay class, and except Rajput, except different Muslims rulers, how did the Cholas rise to power? Think it and tell me. The most prominent dynasty of the South India plains was the Chola dynasty. In fact, you have studied about in the 6th class the Chelas, Pandyas. Okay, in the early century, the Cholas established their kingdom, but when we're talking about the earlier medieval period, they also established their kingdom. The Cholas were contemporaries of the Chalukyas and the Pallavas and the Pandyas and the Rashtrakutas. Okay, the Cholas were earlier subordinate to the Pallavas king of Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya Chola was related to ancient ruling families of Cholas. He belonged to Uyarar, had captured the Kaveri Delta region from Muttayar in the middle of the 9th century. The new dynasty was founded by him, which ruled from AD 846 to 871. Vijayalaya built the town of Tanjavur and made its capital of his kingdom. He also built a temple of goddess Nishambuddin there. Okay class, so first of all, Cholas in the initial time period, a minor chiefly family known as the Muttayar held power in the Kaveri Delta, and they were subordinate to the Pallavas king. Okay, and of the Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family Cholas from Urayar, captured in the delta from the Muttayar in the middle of the 19th century. And he built the town of Tanjavur and the temple for goddess Nishambuddin there. Okay class, the successor of the Vijayalaya conquered the neighboring region, and the kingdom grew in the size power. The Pandyas and the Pallavas territory to the south and north were made of this kingdom. Okay class, now you can see in this map Cholas were ruling here, and it was a very powerful kingdom in that time period. He established their kingdom in here. First of all, Cholas were subordinate of the Pallavas. Now you can see in this map, here is the Pandyas, Cheras, Cholas, and Cholas were contemporary of the Rashtrakuta also and Pallavas also. Okay, and here is the Eastern Chalukyas Vengi. Okay class, the Cholas were also contemporary of the Chalukyas. So it's very important because in the South India Cholas were ruling, and it was very very important because it was a very powerful kingdom in the South India.